Alright, it's about 5:30 now. I think we're gonna go ahead and start. Assuming everyone's in the room. Okay, yeah, okay, we're good. Everyone's in who was here on time anyway. Hello and welcome to the Pratchett and Memoriam panel. It's exciting and also not exciting, and you know. I'm Taylor, I'll be moderating the panel, and I'm actually just going to let the panelists introduce themselves because I figure no one knows themselves better than them. So I'll just start down at this end and everyone can just tell them.
Okay, my name's K Tetch. Those of you who come to the panel in the past have seen me here. I've been reading Pratchett now for 20 years or so.
My name is Sue, or Sybil. This is Errol. I am a podcaster. I am on the Anomaly podcast, which is general geek topics, and also Women at Warp, which is a feminist Star Trek podcast. I have cards, so see me after. And I have been reading Terry Pratchett after my first Shakespeare class in college. My brother sent me Weird Sisters, and I read it in a day. And I read up to that point. I went back to the beginning and read up to that point in the Discworld series in about 6 months, and have been reading ever since.
I am A.R. Cook. I am actually the author of a young adult fantasy historical fiction series, The Scholar and the Sphinx. Book 1 and Book 2 are out. Book 3 is coming out November 10th. If you want to learn more about the series, I actually have cards, bookmarks up here too. You can feel free to grab one. And actually my first foray into Pratchett was actually transitioned through another author. I love Neil Gaiman, was when I read Good Omens, was my first exposure. And being introduced to the weird footnotes that I had to read twice and go,
Hello everybody, before I introduce myself, can I get an ook? Oh yeah, that's our people. Okay. Hi, my name is Jonathan French. I am a fantasy author, amazingly a best-selling one, if you only read Kindle, but anyway. But I am the author of the Autumn's Fall Saga, which is an ongoing epic fantasy series of which the first 2 of 8 are out. I am also the author of the forthcoming standalone fantasy book, The Grey Bastards, which is going to be a mixture of Sons of Anarchy with half-orcs. It's going to be, that's also heard some gasps. So that's coming later this fall. I started reading Pratchett. I'm American, but I was actually spent several years growing up in the UK when I walked into W.H. Smith and was drawn to the Jack Kirby cover art. And I think it was Sorcery, I believe, was the first one I picked up, probably because Conina was on the cover and she had boobs. Yeah, so anyway. And this is also my first DragonCon panel, so I'm really excited.
I feel so honored. All right, well, I actually have a list of little talking points that are very, very, very basic things, just like where to begin when you come to the Pratchett series, what novels would you suggest first people read and stuff. But then we also have a room just full of people who I think are pretty informed in the Pratchett area. So what I'm going to leave is I'm going to ask you guys if you would like to go through the basic questions or if you would like to just let panelists start talking, to be honest, as weird as that sounds. Do we want to? Just go for it? Yeah. You kind of have to see the crowd first. So, well, what do you want to talk about, panelists?
I'm really sad.
Sadness.
There's the elephant in the room as well as the new book.
My copy of Good Omens, it'll never be signed by Pratchett, just Gaiman. That is not the thing that I probably should have led with. But
Show of hands, who is completely caught up even through, I know that you and,
You wait through the one that
wow,
was
you guys
just
are
released?
amazing
Well,
people.
Shepherd, yeah.
including Shepherd's Crown. Hence, okay.
Mine is still on its way from the UK.
Yeah, I got the ebook copy as well.
Came out the day after we flew to America,
Yeah.
so I downloaded the Kindle and I've read it already.
I can't read Kindle, I need to have a hardback, so I haven't read it!
Yeah.
I won't buy the American covers. No. So mine is still on its way to me from Amazon UK.
See, it's funny because I'm not caught up, even though I've been reading them since a kid, as a kid, and the reason is because I got so used to the British covers that once I moved back and it was, started going through high school and college, and this was kind of pre-Amazon because I'm that old, it was hard to get, import covers, right? And of course Jack Kirby died and then we got Paul Kidby, which were still better than the ones we got here. And the American covers truly are atrocious.
They're horrible.
When I moved here,
I would have never
13
picked one
years
up.
ago, I saw that.
Right.
It was a big problem.
A sand dollar and bees? I mean, I understand why, but it's still dumb.
But they don't. they don't even look like the right genre, right? Like they just
They're not
They look
right.
more like an Agatha Christie sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
more, yeah, thriller, mystery, but whimsical. I don't know.
Got really confused.
It
Looks like they were made with clip art.
It really looks like the
Especially the mass market paperbacks, the ones with the icons down the spine. Oh, they're so terrible.
It's like
Yeah,
the Color
right.
Magic's just got a suitcase that they pulled out of like
Right.
clip art.
And then got to part of the story where you talk about it looking like more like a treasure chest, and like, what is this? It doesn't look like the thing on the cover. And it's like,
Yeah. It's such a thing of like a big publishing house using an in-house graphic designer because like, well, there's this thing called the luggage, and they put a
They
suitcase.
put a suitcase
like,
right on it.
We're going, wait.
No.
Oh, it's funny.
Please read the book before drawing.
Yeah, no, yeah, done, very rarely happens. Yeah.
It's worth, we get the British cover art in Canada. So it might be cheaper for you to order.
Yeah, I
that's
learned
a-
that after mine shipped.
Well, of course, now it's so easy because, like, you know, you can get import books because the one glory of the internet, so much quicker and cheap. You know, I mean, you can order it's like 99 cents and it comes all the way from the UK. And you're paying more for shipping than you did the book itself, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, but you can still get them. And so I was kind of slowly trying to creep up with, you know, just the right covers because it just felt so important. You know.
Yeah, but in Canada as well, you get the UK art, but the US release date.
We got,
I just
yeah.
thought I would mention on the book covers, in the UK, they recently re-released them with these new hardback covers that are absolutely gorgeous because they've got single colour and then like gold leaf or gold print leaf over the top of them in a stylized image of what the story's about.
Yeah.
You know, I did not need another
Yeah,
shirt.
no. You've got the accent, you've got that. Why are you going to take it all from us, man?
Of course, probably the very worst cover art of all were the 4 pocket editions of the first 4 books that came out about 20 years ago, and they make the US covers look good.
Oh, wow.
But they are copies of books that maybe 3 inches on the side
Yeah.
and an inch thick.
Well, I had heard that even in the U.S. we're going to get new re-released hardbacks of the Jack Kirby covers because like there was a thing on Amazon showing like the color of Magic with the Jack Kirby original, and it was claiming it was a hardback. It was like a $25, $30
We're
book.
getting omnibuses.
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually launched or if it's still like a pre-order or what, but
I have a feeling they're probably going to accelerate through that sort of
Yeah.
release schedule
Now
now.
is the-
Right.
It's not going to
Now is the moment.
absolutely, yeah.
So did you in America? Did you get sort of Terry Pratchett was having a takeoff of not Richard Burton? What's his name? In his place, Llamedos, which is supposed to be a mop of Wales.
Right.
You have to read it backwards.
Oh, sorry, I can tell. Llamedos.
Llamedos.
Yeah.
Read
Write it down
backwards.
and read it backwards.
Yeah. It's like hard for everybody to do. Like I need a pen.
Look at smell.
Llamedos is
He
like,
just told you.
I think it's, do I smell it?
No. There's a Welsh poet called Dylan Thomas,
Uh-huh.
and he has a place which is called Llaregeb Hill.
Llaregeb, and Llaregeb here is actually beggar all spelled backwards. So Terry introduced Llamedos.
Double L. E.
Hey, here's E.
No, it ain't.
Yeah. A-M-E.
D-O-S.
D-O-S.
Yeah.
Sodomos.
Yeah. So, what's the feeling amongst the panel and the audience about Rihanna's decision not to write any more Discworld?
I'm okay with this.
Good on her.
She's not a writer, but she's a game designer, so maybe
She's written
maybe she's going to go
games.
for a new Discworld games. It's been
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
That would be
16 years
awesome.
since Noir.
Right.
You know, I would have been okay with it either way.
Yeah.
You know what? It's he outright said, you know, I have said that she can do it
Yeah.
if she wants to, and she said at least right now I don't want
Yeah,
to.
absolutely.
I'm like,
Yeah.
perfectly fine.
I believe the actual wording she used was, I plan to not do anything canonical to the new Discworld, which was phrased, if I may be butchering that, But when you look at the way she phrased it, it looks that what she's kind of saying is, I don't plan on continuing anything. His work is his work and to be done.
That was what I got from it too.
But I wouldn't mind someone else doing an interpretation of something else. So the Guard series that's been kind of like, maybe may or may not get a TV show, she's totally okay with like, you guys can go and interpret Guards how you want as long as I look over it and make sure it's okay. But you're not allowed to be like, oh, and these are the continued adventures of Sam Vines after, you know, like the books in.
I think we had one back there
We've
first.
got one.
That's actually what I was going to mention.
Yeah.
Yes, I know Rihanna's been kind of involved with the TV series. Has anyone heard anything more about that?
Not since 3 years ago was the last time I heard anything about it.
3 years ago and in production or pre-production or everything's in production.
Oh, it could be worse. I just come from a panel in another hotel where a show had been in production held for 13 years before finally getting on ABC.
Oh,
So,
man.
Wow.
We'll go right here and then we'll grab you next. Oh, you don't have to. All right.
There's last year, I think it was Father's Day, Rihanna posted on Twitter that she'd just finished the screenplay for We Free Men. So that might happen, but at the same time, there's been a massive review of all of the Discworld associated stuff, which is why you won't find any new copies of the Discworld games, because they had permission for that pulled. So I'm sure they're trying to renegotiate it, but whether or not we'll get new extra copies of the Witcher's game, board games and stuff, I haven't heard. But the last I heard was that they didn't have permission anymore.
and if anybody wants to play them, I believe they have them down in the gaming area at the Hilton.
Speaking of games, I had the first two Discworld PlayStation 1 games.
Yeah, the point and click adventures. Yeah, they're great.
I
They're all
still
on
Reality
PC.
Bites and Missing Presumed.
Oh!
Mm-mm, it's all about Discworld
You
Noir.
American title people.
Discworld Noir was the best thing I ever played.
And that's what I got from Rihanna's thing as well, is that she's gone for more of the games. Like Noir was not a canonical character, and even the first two, the first one was a kind of parody of partly God's Guards
Right.
and some others, and the second one was a bit of Reaper Man and a bit of
Yeah.
Moving Pictures. So yeah, so more of a pastiche rather than a straight new original work to base on. So that's where I got from Rihanna's. Not going to make anything canon.
Do a Kickstarter to get a new company to make the next game, get the original voice actors back.
Well, it's going to be a bit hard for some of them, because I know
Doctor Who's dead.
yes, John Pertwee.
Terry Pratchett, Stephen Briggs, Nigel Planer. They're all still doing stuff.
Terry Pratchett.
Oh fuck! Tony Robinson. Sorry.
Tony Robinson, Nigel Planer, Stephen Briggs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this?
Well, yeah, I'd heard of that too, that she was mostly going to focus on adaptations. But actually, I was surprised to hear that We Free Men is getting adapted, because I believe there was talk about adapting that before he died, but it was actually, that was one of the scripts they really tried to meddle in.
She even did a reading on Twitch about 2 or 3 weeks ago of part of the We Free Men.
Awesome.
I managed to find the video, but we don't have a projector here.
I'll take a look for
Can
it.
you guys speak up? We're having a hard time hearing back here.
Yes, certainly.
Absolutely. Sorry.
I'll turn the soundboard up a little.
We will use our mics better.
Do you want that last bit repeated?
Yes, please.
She was saying that Rihanna did a reading of part of We Free Men on Twitch last week. So I know that Twitch is a video thing. I don't know how it works because I'm old. If it's still there, you can, oh geez, that's too much. A little too much. If it is still there, you can go search for that, I guess. Is that how it works?
Kind of. It's a live streaming format.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that better at the back?
Yes.
Does that help?
Thanks.
Okay.
So you'd be interested in pastiches though? Would you like to see more pastiche work? I'm curious.
I like to see more of any work.
Just like seeing it being extended. I'm curious. I'm a Sherlock Holmes person, and I'm like a fan of pastiche, so I'm hugely into it.
Depends on how well written they are.
Yeah,
Well, that's
that's
true.
the thing. It's how is it done? You know, if I love seeing content and I love seeing things like Discworld celebrated, but only if it's done well, only if it's done lovingly, and you can tell. I am definitely feedbacking.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
The other way. Not everyone's just suddenly got tinnitus.
Yeah, right.
Does anyone have anything to say about the when he was ill? We know Pratchett was fighting for the rights, the suicide rights.
With dignitas.
For dignities, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very interesting, and at the same time kind of sad. And like, I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that at all. I know it's just a very topical thing for Memoriam anime, I figure. Does anyone have any thoughts?
Did anybody read the collected nonfiction?
Oh yeah, Slip of the Keyboard.
Slip of the Keyboard.
Awesome.
He has a whole section in there with his writings on like why he is fighting for it and dying with dignity and knowing that you're gonna go and wanting to be able to choose to do it and basically he's mixing statistics with personal stories, and he did the documentary as well, and it's something really interesting to think about when you read through it all.
I just thought it was very interesting because it's such a personal thing to someone who creates a piece of art that touches other people, and then to have their personal side of the story.
Well,
go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say, I felt some echoes of that in the way the witches' characters can know when they're going to die, and the way they can make sure everything is in place and everything is set, and they can go in peace knowing that. I think when I read those parts of the books, I feel that echo of that issue of right to die in
Sure.
the political spectrum right now. So.
I was even going to say the way he kind of treats death as a character who's not really a scary thing. He's just kind of a guy doing his job and is always there. I mean, he kind of treats death just like it's just part of life. That's what it is.
I was at NorrisCon 4 when he was the guest of honor for WorldCon, and there was several people who made comments during the guest of honor speech about I lost a child really young, I lost a baby, and your story of the kindness of death just made it so much easier. And it's kind of amazing how he can do that. A character that started out very comedic.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about personal favorites, by the way, as far as Pratchett's stories, novels.
Ooh.
I know that's a hard one, but I always like to ask that one because then I get to watch everybody go, ooh.
Actually, for me, it's not the canonical novels so much, but it's actually the Signs of the Discworld series. I like those because I'm actually a scientist and engineer by profession, so it helps, especially trying to get things across. And if things had worked out better, I'd be sat here dressed as Ponder. Because that's me entirely in my lifestyle, my work. So.
Yeah, I may be dressed up as Lady Sybil, but that's only because I am not old, thin, or tall enough to be Granny Weatherwax. I love Granny with such a passion, especially that scene. I think it's Witches Abroad, where somebody has the voodoo doll of her, so she just throws her arm into fire, and the voodoo doll goes up. It's so great. I love her, but I also am really attached to Esk. And everybody's pretty much caught up, right? I was so excited when Esk showed up in the Tiffany Aching books. Like tears.
Damien Fairy.
Well, so my favorite probably is always going to be the first one that I was supposed to, which was Good Omens. Although one of my favorite moments, I don't know why it stuck with me, is from early on in Pyramids when our main character, the assassin, is getting ready to go out, and he puts, the knives here and the stars here, and he totally loads himself up. He's totally loaded. He turns around and just falls flat on his face because he's loaded himself up too much. It's too heavy to walk. I don't know why that moment stuck with me, but I just remember actually laughing out loud.
You saw me yesterday, then.
Mine's actually Feet of Clay. I'm a big Watch fan. Of course, they're all very good. But if you've got to talk about the different plot lines, Feet of Clay is, I think it's the time for me that Terry Pratchett got his action chops finally settled. That book not only is funny, but his action is really good. And that's not always the case with him. Let's just be fair. I mean, I think he's a great writer, but every now and again his action got a little muddled. And with Feet of Clay, he just nailed it. And it's one of those things that just plays out very cinematically, and it just hits all the right beats for me. So when I kind of need a Discworld fix and I don't feel like starting one I haven't read, or I think I've revisited that one more than any of the others. It's just a very entertaining read all the way around for me. So.
And I know that you guys just gave me your favorites, so this might even be the same thing, but are there any that you feel are like, do not miss this book? Because I know a lot of people are definitely not caught 100% of the way up.
Small gods.
Small gods.
Night Watch.
Night Watch.
It depends on who I'm recommending it to.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
I start a lot of people with guards, and actually my profession and background is in the theater, so I also give a lot of people soul music, actually. And my dad is also a retired minister and doctor of theology, so I give a lot of other people small gods.
Anyone else have any other thoughts on that?
I always sort of throw. I always throw Carpe Jugulum when only because it's. I felt like it's a witch's book, but it's vampire, so there's not a lot you have to like teach, right? It's just the tropes are all kind of in place already, and it just isn't filled with too many. There's always a few, but it isn't filled with too many things that if you haven't read everything in order publication order up into that point, there's not a lot of in-jokes you lose necessarily. So, because some of them, it's like you want to recommend it, but then you're like, God, 25% of this is going to go over your head because it's set up in other stuff. So.
Yeah, that's kind of always hard to do with a series in a way, even if they're not completely 100% chronological continuations. And do you have any favorite things like the film and television versions that have been put on?
Well, I don't like...
Or any dislikes, I assume.
Yeah, the one I dislike most of all is Colour Magic. Because David Jason is not Rinsman, he never was.
No.
Wrong kind of person. He got it because
But
it's his
Sean
favorite book.
Astin is pretty great.
Yeah. and David Jason was very good as Albert. Sorry, it's long hours already. Going postal again was a lot seemed off and wrong, and they changed a lot of the stories.
They did change a lot. That's the first book I got introduced to for some reason. I don't know why someone gave me that was there.
Perhaps my favorite are the two Cosgrove animated ones. I think they capture the story probably best of all, and they translate it into a visual medium best of all. Although saying that, me and my kids do watch Hogfather every Christmas. And we have done since.
Yeah, I've seen Hogfather quite a few times. Yeah.
Why wait till Christmas?
Oh, we know, but it's a tradition to have it Christmas Eve every single year since it came out.
Let's see where to go from there.
I think that covers it, right?
I think you actually got all of them. Mentioned most of them. And when you say you're speaking about things being in production for years and years and years, Good Omens is still dangling somewhere in the ether of the BBC.
Although that may be moving forward a bit now with the Pratchett.
Yeah, might be a good...
pushing it forwards. The impetus from the...
I really want to see that, and I really want them to do it right so badly. Yeah. I adore that book.
Well, especially, what might also be pushing it is the American Gods is in production for, is it Showtime or
Somebody,
HBO?
Yes, because the
One
game
of
and
the
stuff
cable
went
channels.
live.
Yeah, because...
And they just did the Neverwhere radio too,
Yeah,
so they're
so
moving into that anyway.
And if American Gods does well, that could be another push for Good
They'll be
Omens,
like,
since it's both of them.
let's get it going.
To see the Watch TV series.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Watch TV series I want to see, but I'm also nervous. It's another, don't mess up the thing I love.
Yeah, I think they have more freedom to not mess it up.
Yeah.
Well, the thing, Alice and I have talked about this. We know each other pretty well as authors, and it's kind of become in the modern day that authors are just farm league for television and film, right? I mean, it's really hard anymore to just make an impact or make a living just writing books. It's like, you'll be sitting in a restaurant. This has happened to me before, and people ask what you do, and you tell them I'm an author, and they're like, oh, what do you write? Oh, fantasy. Oh, so like what? You say, oh, Game of Thrones. Like, oh, I can't wait for you to get your own TV series. I'm just pulling for you. And you're like, hey, buy the book, thanks. I appreciate that, but it's funny because we're talking more and more about what's going to get developed and what's going to come out, and I would love to see all that stuff too. But it is amazing to me how nowadays that type of exposure and that type of option is because let's face it, there are more people watching Game of Thrones than reading Game of Thrones. And if we ever got a watch TV show, we would have that same phenomenon all over again with Discworld. And I'm not saying that's bad at all, but it is just funny to me how, like, here we are talking about a legacy of a prolific and great author, and you know, there is a lot of talk about what's going to get,
when's it going to be on television?
Adapted, right? Yeah.
Did you?
But don't you think that's, I'm sorry.
No, you're
don't
fine.
you think that's just because then there's more of it?
No, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not down on it. I'm not knocking it. I just think it's very interesting. I think it speaks a lot to where we are as a culture and as an entertainment. That, you know, nowadays it's all about getting your books adapted, and
Yeah.
it just seems to be very pervasive.
I get that question every time I go to a school visit.
Yeah.
It's like the second question, kids say, when are your books going to be movies? Like, well, read it first and we'll see what happens down the line.
We still books we turned into movies, my God.
Oh, I thought you were doing the other person first.
No. Or did you still have a comment?
I was just going to say, a lot of you are talking about how you got into Discworld via Good Omens, but I've met a few people who started with Discworld and they went into Good Omens, and it's just such a massive different experience.
I'm that person.
I'm me.
We're
And the long series are quite very different as well, aren't they?
Yeah, the long series is.
We can see
one
some
of my
little,
best.
little overlaps in characters. And
Yeah.
And some references to, like, the science of Discworld in the Long Mars.
that's right, yeah, there are references.
sorry.
So, back to the thing about adapting things. I actually really, for the most part, kind of dislike the television movies that they did. And the main reason is because it kind of frustrates me when I get really into some books, really into, like, seeing the characters and hearing the characters in my head, and I have this whole, you know, idea of what the characters are like, and then the show comes out or the movie comes out, and suddenly everybody's, like, dressing up as them and talking about them, and you know, when you want to talk about them, they're all like, oh yeah, they look just like this, and they did this, and they did this, and you kind of are like, you know, now this character has a very set, solid, you know, way of being, and you don't have all those interpretations anymore. I mean, I understand, and I love movies too, but in terms of Discworld, I'd kind of rather not see all of them made into things at some point, because some of the characters I would like to have my own interpretation of them and be able to talk to people about their interpretations of them too.
I absolutely agree, because I feel like part of Pratchett in particular, who does so many great visual things, but he also leaves it not so descript that you can't add your own imagination to it. Like, I know in the one scene in Colors where they meet, like, the water troll on the edge of the world, it's like there are so many ways you could visualize that character in your head, and yeah, if you put it on the screen, there's only one way to view it, so I totally agree.
Yeah, springboarding off the very same thing. One of the funnest things that we were actually discussing when we first got in here is looking at the cosplays around this room. Like, Crowley walked in. There is no visual for Crowley that is a movie right now.
But we all went,
knew
Crowley.
It. We all, it's you. You know, so, but it's also personal. But at the same, when it's a book, because it's in your head and it's you and the author fashioning that image together. But when you get to a place like this and there isn't some kind of pop culture visual that's been on a screen somewhere for everybody to see, but we can still share and enjoy what we see, you know, that connection.
There is no such thing as screen accurate for book cosplay.
Like, I was surprised as to how many people recognized me as Pessima.
We have one right there. Yes, Eve?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I wanted to say that I agree with what you guys are saying about adaptations, but one of the things that I've felt is kind of a failure in most of the Pratchett adaptations I've seen is they do get the humor and the fun of it, but there's often some more serious undertones that I think are missed. It doesn't have the gravitas of some of the things. Like, for example, in Making Money, not Making Money, and Going Postal, I don't feel, they didn't do anything about the Clax Towers, right? The people that worked on the Clax Towers and their history and their culture and all of that. And I really felt like that was something that added a lot of depth to the story, and then it wasn't in the adaptation.
They cheapened it somewhat.
Yeah, it wasn't as, it didn't have the serious parts. That's what I feel is missing from
Sure,
a lot of
much
the
money
adaptations.
spent on going to Hungary.
Yeah, so first discarding out because this card doesn't have in her hand arm up for like hand.
Oh, sorry. Can't.
I'm
Too short.
I'm sorry.
I'm short too,
I was just gonna say that I want an adaptation even if it's going to suck. Because it never fails. Somebody always asks Jim Butcher what he thought of the Dresden series, and it's like, he always says, it tripled my readership.
Right.
So if it sucks, but it leads more people to actually read the books, I think it's a good thing. I don't want it to suck. I love to watch. I might get stabby if it sucks. But adaptations that all bring more people to the book, so I think it's a good thing.
I'm all about that attitude.
Exactly.
Like I have been trying more and more to train myself to have that attitude about things that change or are rebooted, that I don't like Star Trek and Into the Woods.
I think you just need to yell it out.
You're vocalizing your internal monologue.
That's not an issue. I'm not even yelling. Anyway, my worry with adaptations is that I'm worried that it's going to become Hollywoodized. Like, our characters are going to become the characters, our characters. The ones we see in the heads, the ones we see in the art books are going to become prettified. Like, Sybil's going to be thin. That's like my greatest fear in life, is that they're going to have a thin Sybil. Or like Navi's not going to be as funny looking. Or they're going to make a lot of people way too handsome or way too sexy. And it's like, well, that's the fun of Discworld, is there's all kinds of people, and a lot of them are weird looking. It's like life. And it embraces that. And so that's kind of my worry with, or like, I love Michelle Dockery as Susan, but Susan is also described as being like a skinny beanpole and all elbows and knees, and her hair is described more as a dandelion, and it's just, she was so pretty, and she was great, but she was also just really pretty.
Yeah, it's actually a very valid point. I mean, we had a discussion about on another panel I did at a different con about that exact issue, how the Game of Thrones cast is just gorgeous, right? And it's like, well, wait, you know, and in all fairness, Discworld and Song of Ice and Fire really should have been directed by like Sergio Leone, right? Where everyone is sort of like, you know, just really interesting. And you don't want to quite say hideous, but I mean, just like, these close-ups that make you kind of take a step back, and I think it's a valid point.
Let's go with real.
Yeah, or, you know, unique and varied, right? I mean, but and you can take it too far, but there definitely is an aspect to Pratchett characters of the grotesque, and that's I think you're right. I think that's a large part of it, and it's sad because like the BBC tends to not do that as much, but their budgets are smaller, so you don't quite get the scope. But then the premium channels over here, like the HBOs and the Showtimes and the Stars, they have the budgets but then they do that sexification. So you're right.
Well, BBC also has, a pool of 50 actors.
Yeah, they get a bag. All right, we're gonna go with you next, and then we'll get to you in the red, and next to you, and then we'll move this way in a minute.
Yeah, I think we've been talking a lot about like live action adaptations, and while it's not viable for like a series, I'd like to see them maybe try a different medium like stop motion. I don't know, like who's seen Box Trolls, for example? Oh, I saw the movie, I thought more or one of these surrounding cities, and I would love to see that style that could embrace the kind of beautiful grotesqueness or the grotesque capabilities of the city. And I think, there's a lot of charm to explore there.
Yeah.
It's a good thought. I think that. All right,
in the red.
In the red.
Well, in fairness to the Hogsfather movie, Pratchett does say that as Susan got older, she learned to control what her hair does. So when she's younger in soul music, it is just it follows her mood. She can't do much with it, but she can get it to go into a bun or whatever she wants to do later on. She does get to control it. So, and she's described as pretty in a skinny sort of way. So I think she quit being so much elbows and knees when she got older. What? And a little frumpy, you think?
Did anybody?
I thought they did a pretty good job on her, to be honest. Yeah.
Kind of getting away from adaptations, did any, because it's the legacy and we're all clearly fans, but did anybody here see the Guardian article that Jonathan Jones wrote 4 days ago about?
No, I didn't read it. I took a glance at it, but
and for those who don't know, the Guardian, I don't know if it was just on the .com or if it's actually in the newspaper, but Jonathan Jones did a column, which the title was, and I don't even think I'm paraphrasing this, Terry Pratchett is not a literary genius. And don't start a riot. No, I didn't riot. We share the same first name, but that's it. But anyway, it was a very elitist, very snobby, very peevish, sort of just horrible dilettante way. But it's just very vitriolic and kind of awful, which you experience a lot in books. Literary fans can tend to be that way, sort of nose in the air. But I just wanted to kind of bring it up because, here we are talking about his legacy, and it's funny, like 4 days ago, right before this panel, we already have people coming down, denigrating and just trying to be naysayers, and
it was in response to the Shepherd's Crown, release. So his book sales on Amazon dropped a lot, and so is his average rating score, back down to 1 star.
Pratchett or
Jones?
Jones, yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Oh, there was a lot of retaliation.
Good job, fandom.
The key thing about that Jonathan Jones article is he says in the article he has never read.
Yeah, and never will.
No intention of it. He looked at it and it
So is the judgment
Wait a minute, has he
solely
seen
that
the
it's a
American
fantasy
covers? Because that would
series?
make sense.
It's super popular.
Wow.
And I read a great response to it. I wish I could remember where it was, but it was talking about how historically the literary elite in the UK has been had a very narrow focus, and it related it to like colonialism and racism and all this really interesting sociological perspectives
we British
about
are nothing if not interesting.
Right. About what gets considered great litture and what gets shunted off to the side. So anything that's popular can't be great literature, of course.
Yeah. I think the finding about great is Pratchett was never trying to write the next work of William Shakespeare. I think a lot of people criticize Discworld for not being this deep, in-depth, like super study of this something and this other something. But Pratchett was never trying to be anything other than Pratchett, and I think it was earnest and honest and something that was fun, and that's what he wanted, and that's what he got in spades.
So we'll get the person right behind you, actually. Yeah. And then we'll go purple.
One thing, the adaptations weren't made by the BBC, they're made by Sky. This matters if you're going to go and try and find stuff about them. So keep an eye out for Trollbridge. It's a fan-produced short film that's been in production for mumble over 10 years. That they swear is coming out soonish. And on the topic of the of whether or not it's literature, there's a really interesting article by Neil Gaiman on the anger that got Terry to write some of the books. And if you start reading through that, it puts a slightly different spin on some of them.
Yeah.
And the gentleman purple hair?
So I'm not sure whether this made it to American covers or whatever, but in some of the early books, they would have like reviews, how they would put like reviews praising the books on, and on one of the some of the early Discworld books, I think there's a review that said a complete amateur doesn't even write in chapters, hasn't got a clue. So I kind of feel like if Sir Terry were still around today, that article you're discussing will probably be quoted on the cover of it.
Oh, absolutely. With gusto, yeah.
One other thing, sorry, I tried to raise my hand for it earlier.
Oh, it's
off topic now. Calling back to what you said about Carpe Jugulum, if you read that one out of order without the prior Witches books, you spoil my favourite Discworld moment of all, which is when Nanny says I could never marry a man with a limp, and Magrat is the one to say, limp what?
And it's totally unavoidable, right? I mean, there's one of those in every book past the first one, right? I mean, it's like, my wife has only ever read Good Omens. That's the only Pratchett she knows, and she loves it. And I keep trying to figure out a way, but it's just like, I have no imagination. I'm like, look, you just need to start with Color Magic and just plod your way through 41 of these things. Like, I don't know what else to tell you.
Get her the audiobook.
Well, she reads fine. It just seems to be a daunting thing for some people.
It's very
right?
daunting.
You know?
Right. The Stephen.
Don't over here.
All right. Going back to your literary discussion, I just feel very strongly that Pratchett, although some of his later novels, we can really start to tell his dementia was starting to have an effect. The last few novels have definitely not had that straight Pratchett-ness, or at least it hasn't been as distilled as it was in some of his other novels. But all that to say, the best of Terry Pratchett holds its own with Tolkien, with a lot of these other sort of works that really deal with the full human experience. And so very much, he may end up like a H.P. Lovecraft, where genre fans will keep going back to that well over and over again 100 years later on. Or he may be like a Dickens, where he actually gets to be in the canon, whatever that actually means. So all that to say, great writers who really have an impact and have a fan base last. And so whatever some some British man, and I love all things British, so I don't want to go down too hardly, although they did bring us Piers Morgan, so...
we got rid of him and he came here.
So no matter what he may say, great art lasts.
I think he himself would have found it hilarious, because he has said in his acceptance speeches, you can find the text of them. I never set out to write literature. I still don't think this is literature. So, whatever.
But even if he didn't set out to write literature, at least what always drew me to him was that you could tell he always had something to say. Like even with his later works, you could tell it was like he was kind of writing for himself. These were the words he thought worth saying before he died. So that's what makes all the books stand out to me, is there is a
Words in the
force of
heart.
personality.
It's actually funny you mention the words, because my first ever introduction to Pratchett was not through a book, not through Viewed Omens. It was my high school literature teacher who, when we were doing literary analysis, she would put a quote by some great author of great literature on the wall. And then on the other side, she would put a Terry Pratchett quote completely mocking what that other Tolkienic elves, and then there would be that quote from The Light Fantastic about elves. And I remember going like, who is this? Who is this awesome? And then I picked up a Terry Pratchett book, and it was because of that, because the words were just, they rang so true.
I know my daughter would love to have had your teacher. Her high school English lit teacher has absolutely no idea who Terry Pratchett is, and that's British lit teacher. Just this last year when Pratchett died, she was really sad, and she talked to her teacher, and no idea who it is. This person teaches British literature in Georgia school system.
And I bet you that what that really means is Jane Austen, right? Tom Hardy.
I just want to bring the conversation.
Sorry.
I just want to bring the conversation around to some of the other books, like his standalone books, Nation and Dodger.
And Strata.
That's a Discworld book.
His non-Discworld books, The Carpet People, Truckers, Joining the Bomb. Like, what's your thoughts on all those series?
I love. I got the new edition of the Carpet People the other day with his original artwork inside it, and I found that at Freddie at Ollie's in Stockbridge for like $3. But it was a nice hardback version. I love that one, and I really, really like Strata.
I really like, for people who are super into YA, I like giving them the Johnny series. Nation, it took me a really long time to get into. I started and stopped that book a lot. And I think I just wasn't in the right mindset for it. But when I finally got there, when I finally got over that hump, I really enjoyed it. But I am one of the seemingly few people who really loved Dodger. And I think I might just like that aesthetic, but I loved Dodger.
Admittedly, I haven't read Dodger, and of the standalones that you mentioned, I read Strata and Diggers and Truckers when I was a kid because they had the same Jack Kirby artwork, and so when I picked them up off the shelves, I didn't even realize they weren't Discworld books because I just saw his name and the same artwork. And that was 25 years ago, and I have had a kid since then. So my memory of those books is really, really, really not good. But I know that I remember enjoying them, and I think that you bring them up might just answer the question that we were all sort of talking about. It's like, well, how do you introduce Discworld, or what Discworld book do you don't, right? You hand them Truckers or Diggers or Strata, right? And it's, it might be an easier kind of jumping off point or an access point. But no, I mean, I couldn't really see him, but the gentleman who was talking about his legacy and how art lives forever, and thank you for the courage in a panel of Discworld fans for saying that you could feel his illness wearing on his writing, because I brought that up at another con, which I won't mention, and I thought I was going to get lynched. So, and I think that those books are earlier. So, most writers get better as they go. It's always sort of sad when a writer peaks early, because then it's just like, nothing really, you can't really go anywhere from there. And Terry Pratchett definitely wasn't that. He got better as he went along. Oh, yeah. And so, I think Truckers and Diggers and Strata may suffer a little bit just because they're so early, and because they're not connected to a Discworld series, there's not a lot of necessarily drive for people to read them. But I certainly think once you're a fan, they're worth picking up, right?
Because I remember when we did the first panel of this, nobody, I think, in the room had really read Strata or Diggers or Truckers or Dark Side of the Sun even.
Yeah, Dark Side of the Sun. Or The Unadulterated Cat. Anybody?
And of course we have the TV adaptations for the Johnny series. Those were quite interesting in a way. My kids still like watching the latest, what's the third one? No, is that The Bomb? Yeah, Johnny and the Bomb.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, no, well, I was going to say, coming on to his last book, which I did read last week in the day.
Sure.
I'm not going to go into the plot because people may not have read it, but you do see it's not sort of the fullness. And I think that article that you mentioned, which I also read, so I downloaded on the internet, one thing it did say is that it was unfinished.
It did
and that
feel...
Terry wrote in he'd have the beginning, the middle and the end, and then he'd go back, and he'd almost hold on to it, not let the publishers get hold of it. He hadn't quite finished it, and I think a lot of that was, you can see that it didn't have the depth. You'd have gone over it again and polished it a little bit.
When I got to the end, I felt there should have been another chapter.
There should be more. There was another chapter, there was unfinished, something that was unsaid, but in your heart you think, it's our memory, isn't it? You can actually think, well, actually, I know, in your heart you know what he's going to say in that last chapter that wasn't written.
Yeah, because, I think I can say it without too many spoilers, but certain chapters lead you to think there's going to be more about what's going to come to the end.
And I felt that, it's the end already. Oh,
yeah.
There's more, but he's there.
Yeah.
Could that have been intentional, though?
It could have been.
To say, there's more I have to say, but I have no more time.
Could be.
Yes.
I did want to ask, because this is kind of an in memoriam panel, one of the things I was thinking about when Terry died was what I took away from his books. For example, like, I'm agnostic, then there's that line in Small Gods where after the ship wrecks and their ship captain's facing the Black Desert, and he thinks, I always believed, I kind of just believed as long as you were a good person, it would turn out all right. And that has always meant a lot to me. So I just was curious with the panel and other people in the room, what's kind of something really big you've taken from the novels? Because I know that's what I was thinking a lot of after Terry died.
Let's start down there.
Let's stop. Okay. Well, something, I guess more so than his books. Well, first of all, his books did show me that you could really break away from that conventional fantasy formula and kind of just do whatever and not be afraid, and you will find a fan base for it. But also just I started looking back more on his life in general and how he kind of wasn't this, from the get-go, from his debut book, he was this huge author that, he was in journalism and he was struggling at first too, and his first couple books were kind of, not a lot of people knew about them, but then he kept plugging away at it. And it's a kind of a hopeful story for people who want to go into writing, that, just keep working, and eventually you can get to the point where you could be writing 2 books a year on average and entertaining a lot of people.
It's a tricky question, but thank you for answering it. Thank you for asking it, and I'll attempt to answer it. I don't know that I'll ever be as prolific as he was, and I certainly got a later start in my career, but you realize when you start writing, like, I have an 18-month process from the time that I write the first word that I'm able to feel like it's done. It doesn't matter how long or short the story is, the book is, it's 18 months. And you start to extrapolate that over the course of an average lifespan, right? And then you think, wow, I only have so many books in me. There's only time for so many, and it's limited, right? And I've got more ideas than I will probably ever get to. But kind of knowing that he was dying, we all knew that, and then we all were sort of preparing for it. Sorry, ever since I had a kid, I've gotten a little sappy, so I apologize. I think what it's taught me is that it's okay not to finish, right? I mean, it's okay to just do it while you've got the time, and you just keep going, right? And not everything has to be wrapped up in a nice little bow. Not everyone has to hire Brandon Sanderson to finish. I think what it taught me is that it's better to be doing it when you're doing it and just exist and be happy with that and not worry about finishing. You know, just produce what you're going to produce. You know?
I think there are so many things, and probably some things that I wouldn't even recognize necessarily. I mean, as I was reading Monstrous Regiment, as I was discovering, my feminism, so how much did that impact it? I don't know. But what immediately came to mind when you asked that question was, if you follow your dreams and believe in your star, you'll still be beaten by somebody who worked harder.
That's encouraging.
Well, I can really top that.
Well, that actually might be a nice note to end on. I know we're about 10 minutes early, but I was really hoping that we could get some pictures of the amazing cosplayers. We could get them together.
I know the guy who was doing the official thing at the Worldcon recently was saying they had a lot of cosplayers, but I said Dragon Cons are better.
Yeah, so.
Let's go, the official.
So please, all of you who are willing anyway, with your wonderful Pratchett cosplay, if you could come up to the front here, we can take at least a group picture, and then anyone who wants to.
Real quick before we do that, sorry.
Sorry.
But no, it's okay. Alice and I have to do this because we have families to feed. For those of us authors that are still alive and have 3-year-olds, please look us up, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, buy our books. We really appreciate it. You might find that we would love to have you as a fan. So
take cards from all of our panelists.
And some of us write nonfiction. Hold that up. Look at that! Yay!
So, thank you guys so much. I hope that was entertaining in some ways.